I always believed my family would be there for me no matter what. Last month, I won millions in the lottery, but before I told anyone, I decided to see who would actually help me in my darkest hour. So I lied. I told them I was broke and desperate. What happened next didn't just break my heart. It changed everything about how I see the people I once trusted most. Before I tell you what happened, please hit that like button if you've ever questioned whether your family really has your back. And don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, you're going to want to see how this story ends. My name is Nancy, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a nurse at a small hospital in Ohio. For most of my life, I believed in the power of family. I was raised by my grandmother Barbara after my parents died when I was 12. Barbara always told me that family comes first, that blood is thicker than water, and that we should always help each other. Growing up, our family seemed close. There was Barbara, my grandmother who raised me, Ruby, my older sister who's 38 and works in marketing, Henry, my uncle who's Barbara's youngest son at 42, Joel, my cousin who's Henry's son and about my age, Victoria, Ruby's daughter who just turned 18, and Nathan, my younger brother who's 29 and has always struggled to find steady work. We had Sunday dinners together. We celebrated birthdays and holidays as a group. When someone needed help moving, we all showed up. When Victoria graduated high school, we all cheered. When Nathan lost his job last year, we all tried to help him find work. At least, that's what I thought we were doing. I should have seen the signs earlier. Like how Ruby would always change the subject when I talked about my nursing job. Or how Henry would make jokes about me being the stable one, with a hint of resentment in his voice. Nathan would sometimes ask to borrow money but never seemed grateful when I helped him out. But I ignored these red flags because I wanted to believe we were a real family. On March 15th, I bought a lottery ticket like I did every week. I always played the same numbers, our family birthdays. I never expected anything to come of it. It was just $1 I spent out of habit while buying groceries. 3 days later, I was getting ready for work when I heard the lottery numbers on the morning news. I wasn't really paying attention until I heard the first number, then the second. By the third number, my hands were shaking. By the sixth number, I was sitting on my kitchen floor in complete shock. I had won. Not just a few $1,000s, not even a few $100,000. I had won $42 million. After the initial shock wore off, my first thought was about my family. I imagined how happy they'd be, how this money could help all of us. Barbara could finally get the medical treatment she needed but couldn't afford. Ruby could pay off her mortgage. Nathan could start that business he always talked about. Victoria could go to any college she wanted without student loans. But then I remembered something that happened 6 months earlier. My coworker Sarah had won $50,000 on a scratch-off ticket. She was so excited that she told her whole family right away. Within a week, she had relatives she hadn't heard from in years calling her. People were asking for loans, getting angry when she said no, and treating her differently. Money changes people, Sarah had told me. Not the person who wins it, but everyone around them. I decided I needed to be smart about this. I called in sick to work, drove to the lottery office, and claimed my prize. I chose the lump sum and after taxes. I walked away with about $26 million. I put most of it in a trust fund and opened a separate account with enough money to last me several lifetimes. But instead of celebrating, I felt scared. scared that this money would change everything, scared that people would treat me differently, and most of all, scared that I would find out my family loved my money more than they loved me. That's when I decided to test them. I know what you're thinking. Why would I lie to my family? Why not just trust them? But here's the thing. I had already seen how money affected relationships. I had watched families torn apart by inheritance fights. I had seen friends become enemies over business deals. I needed to know that if everything went wrong, if I lost everything, my family would still be there for me, not because they wanted something from me, but because they genuinely cared about me as a person. So I came up with a plan. I would tell them I was in serious financial trouble. I would say I had made some bad investments and was about to lose my house. I would ask each of them for help and see what they said. It seemed like a harmless test at the time. I spent 2 days crafting my story. I said I had tried to invest my savings in a business opportunity that turned out to be a scam. I was behind on my mortgage payments and my car payment. I might even lose my job because I had to work extra shifts to try to cover my debts, and it was affecting my performance. I made the story believable, but not too dramatic. I didn't want them to think I was lying. I just wanted to see who would offer to help and who would make excuses. I decided to approach them one by one over the course of a week. I would start with the people I trusted most and work my way down. Barbara first, then Ruby, then Nathan, then Henry, then Joel, and finally Victoria. Looking back now, I realize this plan would reveal more than I ever wanted to know about the people I loved most. I started with Barbara because she had always been my rock. She raised me when no one else would. She worked 2 jobs to put food on the table and clothes on my back. If anyone would help me, it would be her. I went to her house on a Sunday afternoon. She was in her garden, tending to her tomato plants like she did every weekend. She's 73 now and moves a little slower than she used to, but her mind is still sharp. "Hi, Grandma," I said, sitting down on her porch steps. "Nancy, honey, you look tired. Are you working too much again?" she asked, wiping her hands on her gardening gloves. This was my opening. "Actually, Grandma, I need to talk to you about something serious." She sat down next to me, and I could see the concern in her eyes. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I told her my made-up story, how I had invested my savings and lost everything, how I was behind on bills and might lose my house. I watched her face as I spoke, looking for any sign of doubt or judgment. Instead, I saw something that made my heart ache, pure worry and love. "Oh, honey," she said, taking my hand, "why didn't you come to me sooner? You know you don't have to go through this alone." Then she said something that almost made me stop the test right there. "I don't have much, Nancy, but whatever I have is yours. I've got about $3,000 in my savings account. It's not much, but it's something. And you can move back in here if you need to. This house is too big for just me anyway." I had to fight back tears. Here was my grandmother, living on Social Security and a small pension, offering to give me everything she had. She was even willing to let me move back into my childhood bedroom. "I can't take your savings, Grandma," I said. "Yes, you can," she replied firmly. "That money is just sitting there anyway. What's the point of having savings if I can't use them to help my granddaughter when she needs it most?" She went inside and came back with her checkbook. Without hesitation, she wrote me a check for $3,000. "This should help with your house payment," she said, "and I'm going to call Ruby and the others. We need to have a family meeting. When one of us is struggling, we all need to step up. I wanted to rip up that check and tell her the truth right then, but I needed to see what would happen when she called the rest of the family. I needed to see if they would respond the way she did. "Thank you, Grandma," I said, hugging her tight. "I love you so much." "I love you too, sweetheart. We're going to get through this together." As I drove home, I felt terrible about lying to her, but I also felt something else. Relief. At least one person in my family truly loved me unconditionally. Whatever happened with the others, I knew Barbara was genuine. I put her check in my wallet but promised myself I would never cash it. When this was all over, I was going to find a way to pay her back tenfold without her knowing where the money came from. Barbara called Ruby that same evening. I know because Ruby called me an hour later. "Nancy, Grandma told me what happened," she said. Her voice sounded concerned, but there was something else there too. Something I couldn't quite identify. "I'm embarrassed about it," I said. "I should have been smarter with my money." "Well, we all make mistakes," Ruby said. "Why don't you come over tomorrow after work? We can talk about it." I went to Ruby's house the next evening. She lives in a nice suburban home with her husband Mark and their daughter Victoria. Ruby has always done well for herself. She works for a marketing company and makes good money. Her house is always perfectly decorated and she drives a new car every few years. When I arrived, Mark wasn't home and Victoria was upstairs doing homework. "So tell me exactly what happened," Ruby said as we sat in her living room. I repeated my story, watching her reaction. She nodded along, asking questions about the investment and how much money I had lost. "That's terrible, Nancy," she said when I finished. "I can't believe someone would scam you like that." "I feel so stupid," I said. "I just thought I was being smart, trying to make my money grow." "Well, the important thing now is figuring out what to do next," Ruby said. "Have you talked to the bank about your mortgage?" "Not yet. I'm scared they'll start foreclosure proceedings." Ruby was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised me. "You know, Mark and I have been talking about this since Grandma called. We want to help, but we need to be smart about it too." "I understand," I said. "We could probably loan you some money, but it would have to be a real loan, with interest and a payment plan. Mark is worried about setting a precedent with family members, you know?" I felt a little stung by this. A loan with interest? To her own sister? "What kind of interest rate were you thinking?" I asked. "Probably around 7%. That's fair, considering banks are charging much more right now. And we'd need you to sign a promissory note." 7% interest. A legal document. This was not what I had expected from my sister. "How much could you loan me?" I asked. "We could do maybe $5,000, Ruby said. "But that's really stretching our budget. Victoria is going to college next year and we're trying to save for that." $5,000 at 7% interest with a promissory note from my sister, who I had helped move 3 times, who I had babysit Victoria for free countless weekends, who I had lent money to before with no questions asked and no expectation of interest. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course," Ruby replied. "But Nancy, I hope you understand that we can't just give money away, even to family. Mark and I have worked hard for what we have, and we need to protect our financial future too." As I was leaving, Ruby walked me to the door. Oh, and Nancy? She said, maybe you should consider getting a financial advisor after this is all over. Someone who can help you make better decisions with your money. Someone who can help me make better decisions. The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. I drove home feeling disappointed but not entirely surprised. Ruby had always been practical to the point of being cold sometimes, but charging her own sister interest on a loan during a crisis? That hurt more than I expected. Still, I told myself, at least she had offered something. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe she was just being responsible. I would soon learn that Ruby was actually one of the more generous responses I would get. Nathan called me the next day. Barbara had reached him too. "Hey sis," he said. "Grandma told me you're going through some stuff." "Yeah, it's been rough," I said. "Want to grab lunch?" "We can talk about it." We met at a diner near his apartment. Nathan has always struggled financially. He's bounced between jobs, lived in cheap apartments, and often asked family members for help. I figured if anyone would understand being broke, it would be him. "So, what's going on?" he asked after we ordered. I told him the story again. This time, I watched for a different reaction. Maybe Nathan would be sympathetic because he had been in similar situations. "Man, that sucks," he said. "I've been burned by get-rich-quick schemes before, too." "Have you?" I asked. This was news to me. "Yeah, a couple years ago I put money into this cryptocurrency thing, lost like $2,000. It was all the money I had saved up." I didn't know that happened. I was too embarrassed to tell anyone. But hey, at least you've got a good job to fall back on. You'll bounce back from this. "I'm not so sure," I said. "I might lose my house, Nathan." "That would suck," he said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "But you could always find another place to rent. Maybe get a roommate or something." I waited for him to offer help, to suggest I could stay with him temporarily, to offer to lend me money or help me figure out a solution. Instead, he said, "You know what you should do. You should ask Ruby for help. She and Mark are doing pretty well. They could probably spot you some cash." "I already talked to Ruby," I said. "What did she say?" "She offered to loan me $5,000 at 7% interest." Nathan laughed. "7%? Damn, that's cold. Even for Ruby." "Yeah." "Well, what about Uncle Henry? He's got that construction business. He's always bragging about how well it's doing." "I'm planning to talk to him next." Nathan finished his sandwich and checked his phone. "Hey, I hate to eat and run, but I've got this job interview in an hour. It's for a delivery driver position. Not glamorous, but it pays decent." "That's great, Nathan. Good luck." "Thanks. And hey, don't worry too much about this money stuff. You're smart and hardworking. You'll figure it out." He gave me a quick hug and left. I sat in the diner for another 20 minutes, processing what had just happened. My brother, who had borrowed money from me at least 10 times over the years, had offered me nothing. No financial help. No place to stay. Not even any real advice beyond ask other people for help. He seemed to think that losing my house was just a minor inconvenience, something I could easily bounce back from. The worst part was that he seemed almost relieved that I was the one with problems for once. Like it took some pressure off him to be the family member who always needed help. I paid for both our lunches and left the diner feeling more disappointed than before. Henry owns a small construction company. He's always been the most successful person in our family, at least in terms of money. He drives a nice truck, owns his own home, and takes vacations every year. He is also the person who's always talking about the importance of hard work and personal responsibility. I called him that evening and asked if I could come by his house to talk. "Sure, Nancy. Is everything all right?" he asked. "I'll explain when I see you." Henry lives in a larger house than the rest of us, in a nicer neighborhood. When I arrived, he was in his garage working on some project. His hands were dirty and he was wearing old clothes, but his garage was full of expensive tools and equipment. "What's going on, kiddo?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. I told him my story. As I spoke, I watched his expression change from concern to something that looked almost like disappointment. "Nancy," he said when I finished, "I'm surprised at you. You've always been the smart one in this family." "I know I made a mistake," I said. "A mistake?" "This sounds like poor judgment to me. What kind of investment promises those kinds of returns without any risk?" I realize that now. "And you didn't do any research? Didn't ask anyone for advice before putting your life savings into some scheme?" I felt my face getting hot. "Henry, I'm not here for a lecture. I'm here because I need help." "What kind of help?" he asked, crossing his arms. "I might lose my house. I'm behind on payments and I don't know what to do." Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that shocked me. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." "What do you mean?" "Nancy, you're a single woman with no kids. Why do you need a whole house? Maybe this is an opportunity to downsize, get an apartment, live within your means." "This is my home, Henry. I've lived there for 6 years. And now you can't afford it. That's the reality of the situation. So you won't help me?" I didn't say that. But I'm not going to enable poor decision-making either. If you want my help, you need to show me you're serious about changing your financial habits. What does that mean? It means you sell the house, move into an apartment, and prove to me that you can live on a budget for 6 months. Then we can talk about me helping you with a down payment on something you can actually afford. I stared at him. "You want me to sell my house and live in an apartment for 6 months before you'll consider helping me?" "I want you to prove you've learned from this mistake." "Nancy, I've worked hard for everything I have. I started my business with nothing and built it up over 20 years. I'm not going to hand out money to someone who's just going to waste it again." "I'm not asking for a handout, Henry. I'm asking for help from my family. And I'm offering help. Just not the kind you want. What if I can't find an apartment? What if I end up homeless?" Henry shrugged. "You're a nurse. You make decent money. You'll figure it out." I felt like I had been slapped. This was my uncle, who I had looked up to my whole life, who had taught me how to drive, who had fixed things around my house when I first moved in. "So that's it?" I asked. "You're going to let me lose my house because you think it will teach me a lesson?" "I'm going to let you face the consequences of your actions. That's how people learn and grow." I left Henry's house feeling angry for the first time since I started this test. His response wasn't just unhelpful, it was cruel. He had the money to help me save my house, but he would rather see me lose it to prove a point about personal responsibility. As I drove home, I started to realize that this test was revealing something darker about my family than I had expected. These weren't just people who couldn't help me. These were people who didn't want to help me. Joel is Henry's son, and he's always been the laid-back one in the family. He works for his dad's construction company and lives a pretty simple life. He's never had a lot of money, but he's also never seemed to stress about it much. I called him the next day and asked if he wanted to grab a beer after work. Sure, he said. Everything cool? I'll tell you about it when I see you. We met at a local bar that evening. Joel was still wearing his work clothes and had paint under his fingernails. So what's up, cuz? He asked after ordering a beer. I told him my story, expecting a different response than I had gotten from his father. Damn, Nancy, that really sucks, he said. Dad told me Grandma was calling everyone about some family meeting. What did you think about that? I figured someone was in trouble. I just didn't know it was you. So, what do you think I should do? Joel took a long drink of his beer. Honestly, I think you should just declare bankruptcy. Bankruptcy? Yeah, man. I mean, if you can't pay your debts, that's what it's for, right? You file bankruptcy, start over, and in a few years it's off your credit report. But I'd lose my house. So? It's just a house. You can find another place to live. I was starting to notice a pattern here. Everyone seemed to think losing my house was no big deal. What about asking for help from family? I asked. Joel laughed. Nancy, look around. None of us are rich. Dad's got his business, but that doesn't mean he's got cash lying around to bail people out. Ruby's got her own family to worry about. Nathan can barely take care of himself. But we're supposed to help each other, right? That's what family does? Family helps each other in realistic ways, Joel said. Like, if you needed a place to crash for a few days, or if you needed help moving, or someone to co-sign an apartment lease. But losing your house because of a bad investment? That's on you, cuz. So you won't help me either? Help you how? I've got maybe $300 in my checking account. What am I supposed to do with that? I don't know. Something. Anything. Joel signaled the bartender for another beer. Nancy, I love you, but you're being unrealistic. This isn't a movie where the family comes together and saves the day. This is real life. People have their own problems. We finished our drinks in mostly silence. When we left the bar, Joel gave me a quick hug. Hey, for what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened to you, but you'll be okay. You're tough, and you've got a good job. Just don't make the same mistake twice, all right? As I watched him drive away, I realized that Joel's response might have been the most honest one yet. He didn't pretend to care more than he did. He didn't lecture me or make me jump through hoops. He just admitted that he wasn't willing to sacrifice anything to help me. In a way, it was almost refreshing. At least he was being real about it. Victoria is Ruby's daughter and the youngest member of our family at 18. She's always been sweet to me, and I've always had a soft spot for her. I helped pay for some of her school activities over the years and took her shopping for prom dresses. I figured she wouldn't be able to help financially, but I was curious to see how she would react to the news. I called her the next evening when I knew she'd be home from school. Aunt Nancy, she answered cheerfully. What's up? Hey, sweetie, can we talk for a minute? Sure. Is everything okay? Mom said something about you having money problems, but she didn't give me details. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I gave her a simplified version of my story, leaving out some of the more complicated details. Oh my God, Aunt Nancy, that's terrible. she said. I can't believe someone would scam you like that. Her reaction was immediate and emotional, which was more than I could say for some of the adults in our family. I'm really stressed about it, I admitted. I wish I could help you, Victoria said. I've got like $50 from my part-time job, but that's not going to do much. I appreciate the thought, sweetie. Wait, she said suddenly. What if I started a GoFundMe for you? I could share it on all my social media accounts. My friends would probably donate, and maybe it would go viral or something. The idea of my 18-year-old niece starting a crowdfunding campaign for me was both touching and mortifying. That's really sweet of you to offer, I said, but I don't think I'm ready for that yet. Are you sure? I bet I could raise at least a few $1,000s. Everyone loves a good comeback story. Victoria's enthusiasm was genuine, and her willingness to help, even in a way that would be embarrassing for her, meant more to me than anything the adults had offered. Let me think about it, I said. Okay, but don't wait too long. The internet moves fast, and timing is everything with these things. After I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions. Victoria was the only person who had offered to help without conditions or lectures. Sure, her solution wasn't practical, but her heart was in the right place. It made me sad that an 18-year-old showed more compassion than people 3 times her age. Barbara called me on Friday and told me she'd arranged a family meeting for Sunday afternoon at her house. I've talked to everyone, she said. We're going to figure this out together. I dreaded this meeting more than I can explain. I knew what each person had said to me privately, but I was curious to see how they would act when we were all together. Sunday came, and I arrived at Barbara's house to find everyone already there. Ruby and Victoria, Nathan, Henry, and Joel were all sitting in Barbara's living room, looking uncomfortable. Now that Nancy's here, we can get started, Barbara said. As you all know, Nancy is going through a difficult time financially. She lost her savings to a scammer and is in danger of losing her house. Everyone nodded solemnly. I think we need to come together as a family and help her through this, Barbara continued. That's what families do. Henry cleared his throat. Grandma, with all due respect, I think we need to be realistic about what kind of help we can provide. What do you mean? Barbara asked. I mean that throwing money at this problem isn't going to solve anything if Nancy hasn't learned from her mistakes. Ruby nodded in agreement. Henry's right. We need to think about this practically. What are you suggesting? Barbara asked. I think Nancy needs to consider bankruptcy, Ruby said. It might be her best option at this point. Bankruptcy? Barbara looked shocked. That would ruin her credit for years. It would give her a fresh start, Joel added. Sometimes that's what people need. I sat there listening to them discuss my future like I wasn't even in the room. What do you think, Nancy? Barbara asked. I think it's interesting that everyone is so quick to suggest bankruptcy when I haven't even asked anyone for money, I said. The room got quiet. Nancy, that's not fair, Ruby said. You told me you needed help with your mortgage payments. I said I was struggling. I didn't ask you for anything specific. Well, what are you asking for? Henry demanded. I looked around the room at these people who were supposed to love me. Barbara was the only one who looked genuinely concerned. The others looked annoyed, like I was interrupting their Sunday with my problems. I'm asking for my family to care about whether I end up homeless, I said quietly. That's not going to happen, Nathan said. You're being dramatic. Am I? Because everyone here seems to think losing my house is no big deal. It's not the end of the world, Ruby said. People lose houses every day. You'll find somewhere else to live. Where? With who? Silence. Nancy, Henry said finally. You're a grown woman. You made a bad decision, and now you need to deal with the consequences. We can't save you from yourself. I'm not asking you to save me from myself. I'm asking for help during a crisis. And we're offering help, Ruby said. Just not the kind you want. What help? Bankruptcy advice? Lectures about personal responsibility? Suggestions that I should just accept being homeless? Now you're being unfair, Joel said. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like the only person in this room who actually cares about helping me is Grandma. Barbara reached over and squeezed my hand. That's not true, Ruby protested. We all care about you. Do you? Because it doesn't feel like it. The meeting deteriorated from there. Henry gave another lecture about personal responsibility. Ruby talked about the importance of being realistic. Nathan suggested I look into government assistance programs. Joel recommended bankruptcy again. Victoria was the only one who didn't speak much, but I could tell she was uncomfortable with how the adults were treating me. The meeting ended with no concrete help offered beyond Barbara's $3,000 check, which I still hadn't cashed. As everyone was leaving, Ruby pulled me aside. Nancy, I hope you know we're not trying to be mean. We just don't want to enable bad financial decisions. Enable bad financial decisions? Ruby, I'm not asking you to fund a gambling addiction. I'm asking for help saving my home. And we've offered to help in realistic ways. A loan at 7% interest is not helping. That's profiting off my crisis. Ruby's face got red. Mark and I worked hard for our money, Nancy. If we loan it out, we deserve to be compensated for the risk. The risk of lending money to your sister? The risk of lending money to someone who's already proven she makes poor financial decisions. I stared at her for a moment, then walked away, without another word. That night, I sat in my house looking around at everything I had worked so hard for. My furniture, my decorations, my little vegetable garden in the backyard. According to my family, I should just let it all go. I should accept bankruptcy and start over, because that's what happens when you make poor financial decisions. But here's what they didn't know. I hadn't made any poor financial decisions. I had won the lottery. I had more money than all of them combined. And when I had asked for their help, not their money, just their support and love, they had all failed me. That's when I decided the test was over. It was time for them to learn who they had really been talking to. I spent the next 3 days planning my revenge. And yes, I'm calling it revenge, because that's exactly what it was. These people had shown me that their love was conditional, that their support came with interest rates and lectures, that they cared more about protecting their own money than helping their family member avoid homelessness. Well, I was about to show them what real money looked like. First, I called Barbara. Grandma, I need to tell you something important. Can you come over? She arrived within an hour, still carrying her purse with that $3,000 check inside. What is it, sweetheart? She asked. I sat her down in my living room and took a deep breath. Grandma, I lied to you. I'm not broke. I didn't lose my savings to a scammer. She looked confused. What do you mean? I pulled out my lottery ticket and the paperwork from the lottery office. I won the lottery, Grandma. $42 million. I lied to everyone because I wanted to see who would actually help me if I needed it. Barbara stared at the papers in her hands. Then she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. You lied to me? Yes. You let me worry about you for a week? Yes. You took my money? I pulled her check out of my wallet. I never cashed it. I would never take your money, Grandma. You were the only one who passed the test. Barbara was quiet for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, she started laughing. Nancy, you sneaky little thing. You had me so worried. I'm sorry, Grandma, but I needed to know. And what did you find out? I found out that you're the only person in our family who loves me unconditionally. You were willing to give me everything you had without question. Barbara smiled. Of course I was. You're my granddaughter. That's what love means. I know that now. And I want to do something for you. I want to pay off your house. I want to get you the medical treatments you need. I want to make sure you never have to worry about money again. Barbara's eyes filled with tears. Nancy, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You've sacrificed so much for this family. It's time someone took care of you. After Barbara left, I started planning how to reveal the truth to the rest of my family. I wanted them to understand exactly what they had done and how it felt to be on the receiving end of their indifference. I started with Ruby. I called her and asked if she and Mark would meet me for dinner. Is this about the money situation? She asked. In a way. We met at an upscale restaurant that I knew was expensive. Ruby and Mark looked uncomfortable when they saw where I had chosen. Nancy, are you sure you can afford this place right now? Ruby asked. Don't worry about it, I said. We ordered dinner, and I made small talk until our meals arrived. Then I got down to business. Ruby, I want to talk about our conversation last week. What about it? You offered to loan me $5,000 at 7% interest. That's right, Ruby said. It was a fair offer. Fair for who? Mark shifted in his seat. Nancy, we explained our reasoning. We need to protect our own financial interests. I reached into my purse and pulled out a cashier's check. I placed it on the table between us. Ruby looked at it, and her face went pale. What is this? It's a check for $50,000, made out to you. I don't understand, Mark said. It's a loan. At 7% interest, the same terms you offered me. Ruby picked up the check with shaking hands. Nancy, where did you get this money? I won the lottery 3 weeks ago. $42 million. The silence at our table was deafening. I could see other diners looking at us curiously. You won the lottery? Ruby whispered. Yes. And when I asked my family for help, you offered to charge me interest, your own sister, during what you thought was the worst time of my life. Mark found his voice first. Nancy, we didn't know. You didn't know what? That I might actually have money? Does that change how you treat people? That's not what I meant, Mark said. Then what did you mean? Ruby was still staring at the check. You lied to us. Yes, I did. I wanted to see who would actually help me when I needed it. You failed. But we did try to help, Ruby protested. You tried to profit from my crisis. There's a difference. I stood up from the table. Keep the check. Consider it a gift. But remember this feeling the next time someone in your family needs help. As I walked away, I could hear Ruby calling my name, but I didn't turn around. Nathan was next. I called him and told him I wanted to take him out for a nice dinner to thank him for listening to me the week before. You don't have to do that, sis, he said, but I'm not going to say no to a free meal. We went to his favorite steakhouse, a place he had mentioned wanting to try but never being able to afford. This is really nice, Nancy, he said, looking around at the expensive restaurant. Are you sure you can afford this right now? I can afford it, I said. We ordered drinks and expensive steaks. Nathan seemed to relax as the evening went on. So, how are you handling everything? He asked. The money situation, I mean. It's funny you should ask, I said. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation last week. What about it? You told me I should just find a new place to live. Maybe get a roommate. Nathan shrugged. I was just trying to be practical. You also suggested I ask other family members for help instead of asking you. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not exactly in a position to help anyone financially. But you didn't offer any other kind of help either. Nathan put down his fork. What other kind of help was there? You could have offered to let me stay with you. You could have helped me look for apartments. You could have offered emotional support instead of just telling me to ask other people. Nancy, you're being unfair. I was trying to be realistic about what I could do. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check for $10,000 and an apartment rental application. What's this? Nathan asked. It's a check to cover your rent for the next year. And an application for a better apartment in a nicer neighborhood? Nathan stared at the check. I don't understand. Where did you get this money? I won the lottery, Nathan. $42 million. I was never broke. You what? I lied to everyone to see who would actually help me if I needed it. You told me to find a roommate and ask other people for help. Nathan's face went through several expressions: confusion, realization, and then shame. Nancy, I didn't know. You didn't know I had money? So that changes how you treat people? No, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because when you thought I might end up homeless, you seemed perfectly fine with that. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. I guess I just figured you'd figure it out. You always do. What if I hadn't figured it out this time? He didn't answer. I stood up from the table. Keep the money, Nathan. Use it to get that better apartment. But next time someone in your family needs help, remember this conversation. Henry was the one I was most angry with, so I saved him for last among the adults. His lecture about personal responsibility had hurt more than anyone else's reaction. I called him and asked if he wanted to grab lunch to discuss a business opportunity. What kind of business opportunity? He asked. I'd rather explain it in person. We met at a nice restaurant near his construction office. Henry arrived still wearing his work clothes, but he looked curious. So, what's this business opportunity? He asked after we ordered. I'm thinking about investing in a construction company, I said. Henry's eyes lit up. Really? You know I've been looking for investors. I could expand my business significantly with the right financial backing. How much would you need? Well, ideally, I'd like to get about 200,000 in investment capital. I could buy more equipment, hire more workers, take on bigger projects. That's a lot of money. It is, but the return on investment would be substantial. Construction is booming right now. I pretended to consider this. Tell me, Henry, what makes you think I'm a good person to invest in your business? Well, you've always been smart with money. You've got a steady job. You own your own home. You're the responsible one in the family. The responsible one? Yeah, you know. You make good decisions. You work hard. You don't take unnecessary risks. I let that statement hang in the air for a moment. That's interesting, I said, because just last week, you told me I had made poor financial decisions and showed bad judgment. Henry looked confused. What are you talking about? When I told you I had lost my savings to a scammer, you said I was irresponsible. You said I needed to lose my house to learn a lesson about personal responsibility. Nancy, that was a different situation. Was it? Because now that you think I might have money to invest in your business, suddenly I'm the responsible one with good judgment. I don't understand what you're getting at. I reached into my purse and pulled out a business proposal I had prepared. It outlined a plan to invest $500,000 in his construction company. Henry's eyes went wide as he read it. Nancy, this is amazing. But where would you get this kind of money? I won the lottery 3 weeks ago, Henry. $42 million. The color drained from his face. When I came to you for help, you told me to sell my house and live in an apartment for 6 months to prove I could manage money. You were willing to let me become homeless to teach me a lesson about personal responsibility. Nancy, I was trying to help you learn. You were trying to punish me for what you thought was a mistake. But now that you know I have money, suddenly I'm worthy of your respect again. Henry stared at the business proposal. You're really a millionaire? Multimillionaire. And you know what the funny thing is? I actually would have been interested in investing in your business before I saw how you treated me when you thought I was struggling. I stood up from the table. Keep the proposal, Henry. But remember this the next time you think someone deserves to suffer for making mistakes. Victoria was the only one besides Barbara who had shown genuine concern and offered real help, even if her solution wasn't practical. I wanted to do something special for her. I asked her to meet me for coffee after school. What's up, Aunt Nancy? She asked. Mom's been acting really weird since she had dinner with you. She won't tell me what happened. I'll explain everything, I said. But first, I want to ask you something. Do you remember what you offered to do when I told you I was having money problems? Yeah, I offered to start a GoFundMe for you. Did you change your mind? Because I could still do it. Actually, I want to talk to you about college. Victoria's face fell a little. What about it? Where do you want to go? Well, I got accepted to several schools, but they're all really expensive. Mom and Dad are trying to figure out how to pay for it without taking on too much debt. I pulled out a folder and handed it to her. Inside were acceptance letters from 3 prestigious universities and financial aid documents. What is this? Victoria asked. It's your college tuition paid in full, for any school you choose. Victoria stared at the papers. I don't understand. How is this possible? I won the lottery, sweetie. $42 million. And when I tested everyone in our family to see who would help me, you were the only one who offered to do something that would have been embarrassing or difficult for you. You tested us? I lied about being broke to see who would actually help me. You offered to start a crowdfunding campaign and share it with all your friends. That took real love and courage. Victoria started crying. Aunt Nancy, this is too much. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. You showed me that you care more about helping people than protecting yourself from embarrassment. That's worth rewarding. Joel was different from the others. His response had been harsh, but at least it had been honest. He hadn't pretended to care more than he did, and he hadn't lectured me about responsibility. I called him and asked if he wanted to grab a beer. Sure, he said. Everything going okay? Dad mentioned you had dinner with him, and he seemed pretty shaken up about something. I'll tell you about it when I see you. We met at the same bar where we had talked the week before. Joel looked curious but not worried. So what's going on? He asked. I want to talk about our conversation last week. What about it? You told me I should declare bankruptcy and that losing my house was no big deal. Joel shrugged. I was just being realistic. Sometimes that's what people need to hear. You also said none of our family had money to help with something like that. We don't. At least, I thought we didn't. I smiled. That's an interesting way to put it. What do you mean? I pulled out my lottery ticket and placed it on the bar between us. Joel looked at it, then looked at me. Is this real? $42 million. I won it 3 weeks ago. Holy shit, he said quietly. You're serious? Dead serious. I lied to everyone about being broke because I wanted to see who would actually help me if I needed it. Joel was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Man, that's cold. But also kind of brilliant. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? You asked me for help I couldn't give, and I was honest about it. I didn't pretend to care more than I did, and I didn't lecture you about making better choices. That's true. Plus, I always figured if someone in our family won the lottery, it would be you. You're the only one who actually buys tickets regularly. I laughed despite myself. You're taking this better than anyone else. Because I've got nothing to feel guilty about. I told you the truth about what I could and couldn't do. That's more than some people can say. Joel raised his beer. Congratulations, cuz. I'm happy for you. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like I was talking to a family member who wasn't trying to manipulate me or make me feel bad. Word spread quickly through the family about my lottery win and what I had discovered about each of them. The reactions were exactly what I expected. Ruby called me crying, apologizing for offering to charge me interest. She begged me to understand that she and Mark were just trying to be responsible with their money. I know you think we were being greedy, she said, but we really thought we were helping you learn to be more careful with money. By charging me interest during a crisis? We didn't know it wasn't a real crisis. That's exactly the problem, Ruby. You didn't know, but you still chose to profit from what you thought was my suffering. Nathan called and left several voicemails apologizing for not offering more help. He said he had been going through his own problems and wasn't thinking clearly. Henry showed up at my house unannounced, wanting to discuss the business investment again. I didn't answer the door. The most surprising reaction came from Joel, who didn't apologize or ask for money. Instead, he sent me a text that said, "Glad you found out who your real family is." That information is worth more than $42 million. Barbara, of course, was just happy that I was okay and that I could afford to take care of myself. Victoria was still in shock about the college tuition, but she was already making plans for her education and talking about ways she could use her opportunities to help other people. 3 months have passed since I revealed the truth about the lottery win. The family dynamic has changed completely, and not in the way most people would expect. Ruby and I barely speak anymore. She's still angry that I tricked her, and I'm still disappointed in how she treated me. Mark keeps trying to get me to invest in various business opportunities, which only makes things worse. Nathan has been more attentive, but in a way that feels fake. He calls me regularly now, always asking how I'm doing and if I need anything. The sudden interest in my well-being feels calculated. Henry has completely changed his tune about my judgment and decision-making skills. He talks about me like I'm some kind of financial genius now, which is just as annoying as his previous lectures about personal responsibility. Joel and I have actually gotten closer. His honest reaction to everything earned my respect, and we hang out more often now. He's never asked me for money or special treatment. Victoria and I have always been close, but now we talk about bigger things: her goals, her dreams, what she wants to do with her education. She's the only family member who seems to understand that the money is just money. Barbara and I spend time together every week. I bought her a new car and paid off her house. But more importantly, I listen to her stories and make sure she knows how much I appreciate everything she did for me growing up. People ask me if I regret testing my family the way I did. They say I was manipulative and cruel. They say I destroyed relationships over money. But here's what I learned: I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed what was already there. Ruby's love came with conditions and interest rates. Nathan's support was conditional on convenience. Henry's respect was based on my bank account balance. These aren't relationships that were destroyed by my test. These are relationships that were never real to begin with. The people who truly loved me, Barbara, Victoria, and in his own way, Joel, are still in my life. Our relationships are stronger now because they're based on honesty instead of assumptions. I also learned that money doesn't change who you are, but it sure reveals who everyone else is. When people think you're broke, you see their compassion, or lack of it. When they know you're wealthy, you see their greed and opportunism. The most important lesson I learned is that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them, without conditions or lectures or expectations of getting something in return. Barbara showed up with everything she had. Victoria showed up with creativity and willingness to embarrass herself for my sake. Even Joel showed up with honesty, which was more valuable than false promises. The others showed up with conditions, lectures, and business proposals. So what am I doing with my lottery winnings now that the dust has settled? First, I made sure Barbara will never have to worry about money again. I set up a trust fund that will cover all her expenses for the rest of her life, plus enough to travel and enjoy her golden years. I paid for Victoria's entire college education and set up a scholarship fund in her name for students who want to help others. I bought Joel a new truck for his construction work, not because he asked for it, but because he never asked for anything. As for Ruby, Nathan, and Henry, they each received a check for exactly what they offered me during my test. Ruby got $5,000 at 7% interest. I calculated the interest for the time period. Nathan got a business card for a roommate finding service. Henry got a brochure about apartments for rent. The rest of the money? I'm using it to help people who are actually struggling. I volunteer at a financial literacy center, helping people avoid the kinds of scams I pretended to fall for. I donate to homeless shelters and food banks. I help single mothers pay for childcare, and college students pay for textbooks. I've learned that having money isn't about what you can buy for yourself. It's about what you can do for other people, the right people. But here's the thing I haven't told anyone until now. The biggest revelation from this whole experience wasn't about money or family or human nature. It was about myself. Before I won the lottery, I thought I needed my family's approval and support. I thought I couldn't be happy without their love. I thought I had to maintain relationships even when they weren't healthy, just because we shared blood. The test showed me that I'm stronger than I thought. I don't need people who only value me when it's convenient for them. I don't need family members who see my crisis as an opportunity to teach me lessons about responsibility. I need people who show up, people who offer what they can without conditions, people who love me when I'm struggling just as much as when I'm succeeding. That's a smaller group than I thought it would be, but it's also a more genuine group. Some people have told me I'm bitter or that I've let money make me hard, but I don't think that's true. I think I've just become more selective about who deserves my time, energy, and love. Life is too short to spend it trying to earn affection from people who are keeping score. The lottery ticket I bought with our family birthdays ended up teaching me the most expensive lesson of my life, and it was worth every penny. I learned that blood doesn't make you family. Love makes you family. Loyalty makes you family. Showing up when it matters makes you family. I learned that money doesn't corrupt people. It just reveals who they already were underneath. Most importantly, I learned that I don't need anyone's permission to live my life on my own terms. Today, I have a smaller family than I started with, but it's a real family. Barbara still tends her garden and tells me stories about the old days. Victoria is thriving in college and planning to change the world. Joel still works construction and still tells me the truth, even when it's not what I want to hear. As for Ruby, Nathan, and Henry, they're still family by blood, but they're no longer family by choice. Maybe someday that will change. Maybe they'll learn to love people without conditions or expectations. But that's their journey to take, not mine to force. The $42 million bought me a lot of things: security, freedom, the ability to help people I care about. But the most valuable thing it bought me was the truth about who I could really count on. And you know what? That truth was worth every penny. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama stories. Have you ever discovered something surprising about your family? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach us the most about ourselves and the people we love.